They said the war was over. They lied. When the last enemy ship burned up in Jupiter's orbit, when the silence returned to space, when the broadcast started calling it a victory, people believed it. They needed to. But out in the darker places of the galaxy, where no cameras reached and no diplomats dared go, something worse had already begun. It started with whispers. Cargo ships going silent. Miners on isolated rocks disappearing. Then the rumors. Stories no one wanted to believe, humans being sold. Not just enslaved. Bought, dissected, displayed. Traded like objects. They called it the Flesh Market. No one on Earth heard the name at first. It spread in low voices across abandoned relay stations and between refugee fleets trying to stay hidden. It spread through pain. Through the eyes of those who escaped and couldn't speak of what they saw. And even when the coalition warned us to stay within the safe zones, even when Earth's government denied everything, some of us knew the truth. Humans were being hunted. Not for what we did in the war. Not out of vengeance. For what we are. He sat alone in the shuttle, strapped into a seat that smelled like rust and fuel. His fingers trembled, not from the cold, though the shuttle had no heat, but from what he'd seen back on the station. What he'd barely escaped. The way the airlocks had shut behind the others. The way the lights had gone red before anyone screamed. His breath fogged up the small, cracked visor in his helmet. He didn't trust the air. Not anymore. The shuttle shuddered, engines whining, forcing his body against the restraints. Somewhere below, the station was getting smaller, if it was still intact at all. He didn't look back. He still had her blood on his hands. Not all of it was hers. Some of it had dried between his fingers, mixed with oil and the ash from the explosion. He couldn't even remember her name. Only her eyes. And the sound she made when they took her. The coordinates blinking on the shuttle's panel were all he had. Not Earth. Not even a human colony. Just a number sequence passed on to him by a dying technician who had pulled him out of the vents. Find the buyers, the man had whispered through a shredded throat. You find them, you find the truth. No one knew how the flesh market worked. Not really. Some said it wasn't a place at all. Just a network. Others believed it was a single station, a drifting world-sized ship that stayed hidden behind black stars. He didn't know what to believe. Only that people vanished and sometimes, parts of them came back. The shuttle dropped out of drift space with a jolt. The panel went dark for 3 full seconds. In those seconds he thought he might die. Thought the oxygen would fail. That something would claw through the hull. But then, slowly the panel blinked back to life. Coordinates matched. Position confirmed. He was here. Here was even a place at all. Outside the viewport only darkness. Not the usual kind. Not space black. This felt heavier. It swallowed light. No stars. No movement. Just a feeling in his gut, tight and cold like something was watching. A pulse from the beacon reached him a minute later. Low frequency. Buried in static. But he heard it. And behind the static, something else. A voice? He tapped the comm panel. This is Shuttle 9 to 3K from Station Delta 12. Requesting landing clearance. No answer. Just the signal repeating. He leaned closer. Replayed it. Slowed it down. On the third loop he heard it, under the pulse, a human voice. Quiet. Tired. Don't trust the lights. What did that mean? He sat back, heart thumping, staring at the black screen. A docking tether shot out from the darkness, too fast to react. The whole shuttle jerked as it locked onto the hull of something he still couldn't see. He reached for the manual override. Lock. The engines cut out. The lights dimmed. Something was pulling him in. The docking clamps hissed as they sealed around the shuttle. He barely had time to grab the small pack at his feet before the inner doors opened. Inside was a hallway. Metallic? What? Not with water. He stepped in. The door closed behind him. And the sound changed. Not silence, but a low hum like something was breathing just beneath the metal. He didn't speak. Didn't move at first. Just listened. One step forward. Then another. Down the hall, flickering lights led him deeper in. The walls pulsed. Not like machines. Like veins. He tried not to look at the stains beneath the grates. Or the shapes half hidden in the shadows. Shapes too smooth, too still like statues. Or trophies. He wasn't sure how long he walked. Time felt wrong here. Stretched. Compressed. The lights never stayed on long enough to see far. And each time they flickered, the hallway changed just a little. Pipes where there were none before. A new door. A smear on the floor that hadn't been there seconds ago. Then came the whispers. Not voices. Not really. More like thoughts that weren't his. We know you. We remember your kind. You tasted like fire. You fought like animals. You bled like gods. He gritted his teeth and kept walking. Then footsteps. Not his. He ducked into a side alcove, hand trembling around the small shock baton in his pack. He hadn't meant to use it. Now it felt like the only thing he had. The figure passed slowly. Tall. Not human. Skin like dried wax, cracked and peeling. Long arms. Bent joints. No eyes, but it turned its head toward him as if it could smell him. Then it moved on. He waited a full minute before he moved again. Down another corridor. A faint light ahead. A door. He pressed his hand to the panel. It opened. The room inside was warm. Too warm. And filled with quiet sobs. He stepped in. They were there. Dozens of them. Humans. All kinds. Some old. Some young. None whole. He froze. Some stared at him with wide eyes, too broken to speak. Others didn't even lift their heads. Shackled. Branded. Some wired into machines. One woman had clear tubes running from her arms into a wall that pulsed with pink fluid. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. One man near the door looked up. He still had most of his body. His eyes were red. "You're not supposed to be here," the man rasped. I'm looking for information. About this place. I came to find." "You came to die," the man said, voice flat. "Or worse." "What is this?" "They trade us," the man said. "Piece by piece. To the highest bidder. Some want skin. Some want organs. Some just like the screaming." The words made his stomach turn. The man motioned toward a far wall. "You want answers? Find the seller." "The seller?" "The only one who talks to buyers face to face. Always in the auction hall." "Where?" "Follow the smell." He didn't want to know what smell he meant. But when he left the room he knew. He followed it. Through a maze of corridors that bent in impossible directions. Through silence that buzzed in his teeth. Past walls that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heart. Then he found it. The auction hall. It was enormous. A circular chamber lit with soft blue lights. Platforms lined the edges. Some empty. Some occupied by beings he didn't recognize. Tall. Thin. Skilled. Feathered. Dripping. Silent. All facing the center. Where the platform stood. And on it, her. A human girl. No older than 12. Unmoving. Alive. But drugged. A voice echoed across the chamber. Smooth. Polished. "The bidding will begin shortly," it said. "Please verify your credit streams." He stepped forward without thinking. A guard stopped him. Massive. Armored. Not speaking. He reached for his pack. But then, a voice in his ear. "Don't. Not here." It wasn't his own. He turned. And saw her. A woman in rags standing half in the shadows. Human. Scarred. Eyes sharp. "You want to die fast, go ahead," she whispered. "You want to stop this, follow me." Quietly. He hesitated. Then moved. The guard didn't notice. They slipped through a panel in the wall. Down a narrow chute. Crawled through ducts so tight he thought he might suffocate. Then, another room. Cool. Dark. A terminal blinked softly. She turned to him. "You don't know what this place really is, do you?" "I know enough." "You know nothing. They're not just selling flesh. They're studying us. Cataloging. Preparing." "For what?" She looked him dead in the eyes. "For extinction." He stepped back. "No. The war's over. We won." "No," she said. "We survived. That's not the same thing." He shook his head. "Why would they still?" "Because humans scare them," she said. "Because we fought back. Because we kill better than they do. Because we don't break the way they expect." She turned to the terminal. Typed something fast. A screen lit up. Images. Rows and rows of humans. Labeled. Measured. Modified. Cloned. And then. A blueprint. A facility. Not here. Bigger. Earth-sized. "Where is this?" he whispered. "The real market," she said. "This place is just the showroom." A siren blared. Red lights flashed. She grabbed his arm. "They know we're here." Footsteps thundered above them. He stared at the screen one last time. And saw something that made his blood turn to ice. His own face. Labeled, Specimen 917A. High demand. Live transport approved. He looked at her. But before he could speak, the wall exploded. And everything went white. Pain came first. Not the sharp kind. The kind that rolls in slow, like heat rising under the skin, like the body doesn't know yet if it's still alive. He blinked once. Dust in the air. A high ringing in his ears. He couldn't move. Then sound. Shouting. Not in English. Not in any language he knew. Harsh, guttural tones. Shapes moved through the smoke. He couldn't tell. Heavy boots. Clawed feet. One of them had too many arms. He tried to sit up. A boot came down on his chest. He gasped. The voice that followed was mechanical, like it had been filtered through layers of static and bone. Assets secured. Damage minimal. Hands grabbed his arms. Cold metal clamped around his wrists. He struggled. Bit one of them. It screamed but didn't let go. They dragged him down a long corridor, past the ruins of what used to be a wall. Sparks flew from broken wires. Sirens wailed in the distance, too far away to help. He called out once. But no one answered. They threw him into a chamber. Door sealed behind him. Dark. Not quiet though. Breathing. Not his. He froze. Who's there? Silence. Then a whisper. I thought they'd killed you. The woman from before. She was on the floor holding her side. Blood soaked through her sleeve. He dropped beside her. You're hit. Not deep, she muttered. Just hurts like hell. He tore a strip from his jacket and pressed it against the wound. She didn't flinch. Just stared past him into the dark. We triggered a lockdown, she said. The system thinks you're trying to escape. I was. Yeah. Doesn't like that. Where are we? Storage, she said. For live cargo. He looked around. Cages lined the walls. Most were empty. One wasn't. He stepped closer. A man inside. Barely conscious. Breathing slow. Something had been stitched into his chest. A number. Burn there. Why aren't we in a cell? They don't lock the cages until you're prepped for sale, she said bitterly. Right now we're just inventory. The door clicked. He turned fast, ready to fight. But it wasn't the guards. It was a boy. Human. Maybe 16. Filthy. Thin. But alert. Smart eyes. Come with me if you want to live, the boy said, dead serious. It would have been funny, if it hadn't been so real. How did you? The woman started. Maintenance shaft behind the coolant tanks, the boy said. They don't patrol it anymore. I've been watching the auction hall for days. You escaped. The boy looked down. I hid. Waited. He looked up. Now we run. The woman tried to stand. Groaned. He caught her. You sure you can walk? I've walked with worse. They followed the boy through a tunnel so narrow he had to crouch. Pipes hissed overhead. The metal vibrated with distant movement. More guards, more cargo being moved. He didn't speak. None of them did. Then the boy stopped. Airlock ahead, he whispered. But there's a catch. Of course there was. It's coded, the boy said. Needs a biometric to open. Whose? One of the handlers. The woman looked at him. He didn't want to say it. But they were all thinking the same thing. They needed a body. They waited until they heard footsteps. One. Alone. A small one, tech support maybe. He stepped out fast. Hit the creature in the throat before it could scream. It crumpled. Alive but out cold. The boy moved fast. Took the ID tag. Pressed it to the scanner. The airlock hissed. Now, he said. They slipped through. Bright light hit them. Real light. Stars. He blinked, almost blind. They were in a docking bay. Silent. Empty. One ship. Not large. Not fast. But powered. The boy pointed. I fixed it. Took me a week. You're a mechanic? The boy shrugged. Was. Before they took me. How long were you? Long enough, he said, cutting him off. They moved fast. But the bay wasn't empty for long. Alarms screamed. Doors slammed shut behind them. Guards poured in from the shadows. The woman raised her fists. The boy held a torch. He ran for the controls. They didn't make it in time. A voice boomed overhead. Unauthorized launch detected. Disable immediately. Lasers cut through the air. One burned the floor beside him. Another shattered a crate. They dove behind the ship's landing gear. The woman fired a stolen sidearm. 2 shots. One hit a guard in the neck. The boy screamed. Shoulder. He fell. The man crawled to him, dragged him behind cover. The woman kept firing. Then, nothing. Click. Empty. They were trapped. The boy coughed. Engines primed. Someone just has to hit the launch. He looked at the woman. She nodded once. I'll draw them. No. Don't argue. He won't make it if we don't leave now. She stood. Walked into the open. And ran. Screaming. Every guard turned. He didn't watch what happened next. He just grabbed the boy, threw him into the ship, sealed the hatch and hit the launch. The engine roared. The ship shook. Shots pounded against the hull. Then, gravity tore sideways. And they were gone. Into space. He didn't breathe until the stars steadied. Then silence. The boy was pale. Bleeding. But alive. He patched the wound. Tight. Fast. Neither of them spoke for a long time. He finally sat back. What now? The boy looked up at him. Eyes glassy. You said you wanted the truth. He nodded. The boy reached into his pocket. Pulled out a small black chip. They keep it locked away, he whispered. But I saw the upload queue. What's on it? Everything. He didn't understand. Blueprints. Locations. Schedules. Who buys? Who sells? Where the flesh goes? Who funds it? Why? His hands went cold. The boy leaned back. They're building something. What? I don't know, the boy said. But it's human-shaped. And it's not for us. They drifted in silence. Far behind them the flesh market burned. But somewhere deeper in the galaxy the real danger waited. Waiting for humanity to forget. Waiting to finish what the war started. And as he stared out at the stars, one thought wouldn't leave his mind. Who's next? He hadn't let go of the controls since they left orbit. His knuckles were white, hands locked in place, like if he loosened his grip even a little, the ship would fall apart under them. The boy lay in the medical bunk behind him. Bandaged now but pale. Breathing steady just barely. The silence inside the ship was thick. It wasn't the good kind. It was the kind that made you feel like something was following. Something just out of sight. They hadn't spoken since the jump. He glanced at the NAV display. No signal. No pings. No trace. At least not yet. He finally eased his grip from the control stick and turned the chair. Looked at the boy. You awake? The kid stirred, groaned. Yeah, he whispered. Feels like someone stabbed me with a plasma cutter. You're lucky they missed anything vital. Maybe. He blinked up at the ceiling. Or maybe unlucky I'm still breathing. Don't say that. The boy didn't answer. He stood, moved to the bunk and checked the readings again. The autodoc said he was stable. Not healing fast but stable. Still, there was something about the boy that didn't sit right. Not in a bad way. Just a feeling. Like he knew more than he'd said. Like something was twisting behind his eyes. What's your name? The man finally asked. The kid was quiet for a long time. I don't remember. You don't remember? They erased it, the boy said softly. When they tagged me. Wiped most of us. Said names made us harder to sell. He swallowed. Just numbers. Numbers and pain. He sat down beside him. You weren't born in that place, were you? The boy shook his head. No. Taken. Me and my brother. They got him first. I hid in the waste chamber. He closed his eyes. They found me 2 days later. I was trying to eat metal shavings. I thought it was food. The man said nothing. The ship buzzed quietly under his feet. A gentle hum from the engines, but it was distant. Faint. Almost fading. The boy opened his eyes again. They called it the processing deck. That's where they separate us. Some are too young. Some too old. Some too damaged. They don't sell those. What do they do with them? The boy didn't answer. He didn't need to. The man stood and walked to the viewport. Stars drifted by, slow and peaceful. Too peaceful. Like the galaxy was pretending it didn't know what went on in places like that. You said they're building something, he finally said. The boy nodded weakly. It's not just a market. It's a system. Whole planets built around it. Some in orbit. Some underground. Who runs it? Not one species, the boy said. It's a coalition. Hidden in plain sight. The kind that wears suits in the day and chains at night. He turned back toward the med bunk. Why humans? The boy met his eyes. Because we survive. It hit him like a punch to the chest. Not the answer he expected. But it made sense in a sick, twisted way. We're more adaptable, the boy continued. We take pain. We don't break easy. They figured that out a long time ago. He looked away. They study us, splice us, copy our nerves, build their weapons from our blood. One of them said we were biological infrastructure. The man's stomach turned. That's why they brand people. That's why they harvest. The boy nodded. It's not just slavery. It's harvesting. Some are sold whole. Some are sold in pieces. He gritted his teeth. And some are never sold. They're used. The man didn't ask how. The ship drifted on, heading toward nowhere. No known spaceports. No trade lanes. No beacon trails. Just dark, empty sky. Where are we going? the boy asked. He didn't answer at first. I don't know, he finally said. But I know where I won't go. Back. He nodded. Never back. The boy sat up a little. Groaned. There's a relay station near the asteroid belt around Dracon 5. It's old. Barely guarded. We could bounce a signal. To who? Anyone. Someone. You really think anyone's listening? I have to. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then he turned back to the NAV. The stars kept shifting. Time passed. It was hard to tell how much. The ship didn't have clocks, not ones that worked. Just drifting numbers that didn't match anything familiar. But they were moving. And that's what mattered. The boy slept again. He mumbled in his sleep. Words in a language the man didn't recognize. Names maybe. Or memories. The man left him there, went to the small hold. There were crates half smashed. Leftover junk from whoever had flown the ship before them. He found an old recorder. Half functional. Some kind of journal device. He powered it up. Static. Then a voice. Mel. Dry. Day 391. Cargo lost today. Hull breach. 6 gone. Mostly juveniles. The man stared at the speaker. Market demand slowing. Flesh devalues when too common. Orders changed. Now prioritizing hybrid cores. Splicing teams working double. Click. Another entry. Day 398. One tried to escape. Again. Self-inflicted burn damage. Emotion level too high for transfer. Disposed. Click. Day 403. Shipment to the core delayed. Something's wrong. Command silence. No contact. Atmosphere feels wrong. Like they're afraid. The recorder died. Battery empty. He stared at it for a long time before setting it down. Then he went back to the cockpit. The boy was sitting up now. I heard it, the kid said. He didn't ask how. Didn't matter. They're afraid, the boy whispered. Something's shifting. What do you mean? They've always been careful, the boy said. But lately more shipments. More guards. Like they know someone's watching. The man looked at him. You think someone on the inside turned? Maybe. He reached into his pocket. Pulled out the chip again. This holds everything, he said. Routes. Buyers. Test results. What they've done to people. What they're planning. And? There's a name, the boy said. Buried in the files. Whose? I think it's the one who started it all. That made his blood go cold. They call him the architect. He swallowed. Alien? Human. That stopped him. No way. The boy nodded. Some say he was a scientist. Others say he was military. But every facility I've seen, his name is stamped in the core files. No face. Just the same encryption code. Why would a human do this to their own? I don't think he sees us as his own, the boy said. I think he sees us as tools. The ship beeped suddenly. A light flashed. They both looked at the screen. Signal detected, the boy said. Broadcast. No. Tracking. The man jumped to the controls. We've got a tail. How? Doesn't matter. Can we jump again? No fuel. The boy slid out of the bunk. Went. Gripped the edge of the wall. How far are we from the relay? 30 minutes. If they don't catch us first. Another ping. Closer. The man grit his teeth. Strap in. We run. The boy sat down, weak but alert. Engines roared. The ship kicked forward. The stars blurred. The man kept his eyes locked on the screen. Behind them something moved. Big. Fast. Unmarked. Not a pirate. Not military. Something in between. Get ready to send that file, he said. The boy nodded. The ship shook. Not from turbulence. From something behind them pulling space like thread. Gravity warped. Lights flickered. Come on, the man whispered. They saw it then. Out the rear window. Black metal. Smooth. No lights. No markings. Just a shape like a fong gliding through space like it belonged there. It was gaining. And it wasn't firing. It didn't need to. We're not gonna make it, the boy said quietly. Maybe not. The man turned toward him. But maybe someone else will. The boy looked confused. What? The man held out his hand. The chip. Give it to me. The boy gave it to him slowly. He stood, grabbed a backup pod from the panel. Small. Barely big enough to hold a lunch. He opened it. Encoded burst. Pre-programmed. If I get it into the relay before they hit us. He didn't finish the sentence. The boy grabbed his arm. What about you? The man looked at him. I've lived long enough to see this, he said. Long enough to know it's not about surviving. He placed the pod into the bay. Locked it. It's about stopping them. He fired it. A flash of light. The burst shot off ahead of them. The ship screamed. Power dropped. The fang-shaped vessel loomed closer now, like a shadow ready to swallow them whole. The boy stared out the viewport. Do you think it'll reach someone? The man looked at him. I think it already has. And behind them the stars vanished, one by one. The ship was dying. The lights dimmed one circuit at a time, flickering like a heartbeat losing rhythm. The engines coughed. Power surged, dropped, surged again. Warning alerts blinked across the console, too many to count. Every alarm meant the same thing: time was running out. The boy clutched the edge of the bunk, his breath shallow, pain in every movement. Blood had soaked through the edge of the bandage again. He didn't mention it. Didn't have to. The man stayed at the controls, jaw locked, eyes focused ahead. He kept checking the scanner, watching the distance tick down, 1 kilometer at a time. The relay was close but not close enough. And behind them the black ship was gaining. No weapons, no demands. Just silent pursuit. Like it already owned them. Like it had always owned them. We need a miracle, the man muttered. The boy forced himself to sit straighter. We have one. The man looked back. What? The signal. It's not just data. It's a map. Every transport, every hub, every facility. If the right people see it, they'll burn it all down. Exactly. The man turned back to the viewport. The relay was coming into sight now, an old, rusted ring floating in space, barely powered, barely operational. No security. No guards. Just a blinking transceiver and a hope. He took a deep breath. Once we're in range, I'll patch through the burst. The boy hesitated. You think they'll let you? The man didn't answer. He knew what the kid meant. The black ship wasn't chasing them just to intimidate. It was hunting to erase. Erase evidence. Erase witnesses. Erase the truth. He pushed the engines harder. The ship groaned. Metal bent somewhere deep in the hull. A pipe hissed behind the wall. The smell of burning wire crept in. Almost there. He watched the screen. 50 kilometers. 30. 10. Then the relay's receiver locked on. A green light flashed. In range, the boy said. The man moved fast, fingers dancing over the controls. The data chip, still in the pod's encoder, lit up. Transmit ready. He hit the button. The ship jumped. Not forward, but the impact slammed through them like a fist. The boy flew from the bunk, crashing hard into the wall. The man grunted, thrown against the dash. Sparks burst from the ceiling. Tractor beam, he gasped. They've locked us. The relay flickered on the screen, so close, less than a kilometer now. So close he could see the faint glow of its solar panels. But it was slipping away, shrinking from view. They're pulling us in, the boy shouted. The ship rattled. The engine screamed. One of the side thrusters exploded in a blast of light and metal. The man crawled back to the console, fingers bleeding, face streaked with sweat and soot. He fought the controls. Tried to break free. Rebooted power to auxiliary. Nothing worked. They're not going to shoot us, he said, voice tight. They're going to board us. The boy was breathing fast. His eyes darted around the room. Then we can't be here when they do. There's nowhere to go. Yes, there is. The man turned. The kid held up the emergency pod launcher. Manual. Small. 1 seat. Probably the last thing still working on the ship. No way, the man said. You have to. They'll track it in seconds. Blow it out of the sky. Not if I go dark. Manual controls. No beacon. You won't make it. The boy stepped toward him, shoulders trembling but eyes steady. I already didn't make it, he said quietly. Back in that place I died. What you did, it brought something back. But I'm not the one who can finish this. The man felt something in his chest crack. The ship jerked again, harder this time. Gravity twisted. Alarms shrieked. Lights snapped out, one after another. They didn't have time. He looked at the transmitter. Still blinking. Still waiting. He turned back to the boy. Take the pod. When you reach the relay, transmit the full burst. Then vanish. Hide. Wait until the fire starts. Don't stop until every one of those places burns. The boy nodded. They moved fast. Together. No hesitation. The pod door opened with a hiss. Cold air. Small, tight space. Just enough for a child and the future he carried. The boy turned back one last time. You were right, he said. It's not about surviving. The man met his gaze. It's about ending it. The pod sealed. A small green light. Then silence. Then launch. The tiny capsule vanished into the black, heading straight toward the relay. The man turned to face the rear window. The black ship was right behind them now, close enough to block the stars. Then everything went still. No more alarms. No more shaking. Just a deep, humming sound. Like something enormous had awakened. And a voice, clear, sharp, and cruel, echoed through the comms. Transmission intercepted. Vessel compromised. Prepare for retrieval. The man didn't move. He sat at the console, staring into the dark. But he smiled. Because he knew what they didn't. The transmission wasn't intercepted. Not the real one. That one was already flying free, in a silent pod no one would notice. Heading straight to the last working beacon this side of the void. And behind the stars, far from the black ship's grip, the boy held the fire that would burn the system down. The countdown had already started. They just didn't know it yet. The man sat in the dark, watching the stars slide by, the distant glow of the black ship looming behind them like a specter. The ship's presence had always been ominous, but now, with the boy's escape, it felt almost personal. The kind of pursuit that wasn't just about getting the job done. It was about retribution. For a moment, it seemed like the silence was permanent. The last few seconds of the transmission, the boy's words, echoed in his mind. It's about ending it. The relay was still transmitting, far out there, doing its part to burn the system to the ground. But in the back of his mind, something gnawed at him. Something that felt wrong. Something he couldn't place. That's when it happened. The control panel lit up again, blaring with alarms and warnings. The engine sputtered. A deep, resonating sound echoed through the ship. But this wasn't just another malfunction. It was worse. His fingers hovered over the buttons as the ship shook violently. The system diagnostics blinked to life, only to shut down just as quickly. Then came a voice that made his blood run cold. Re-establishing link. He froze. That wasn't the voice of anyone aboard the ship. It wasn't even the voice of someone from the black ship. It was something else entirely. A calm, mechanical tone, but there was something disturbingly familiar about it. A feeling he hadn't experienced since. He jerked his head to the scanner. The boy's pod wasn't where it was supposed to be. It should have been hurtling toward the relay by now, but instead, it was still on course for a collision, heading straight toward the black ship. Connection confirmed. Preparing retrieval. His throat tightened. There was only one possible explanation. The pod had been hijacked. He scrambled to open the communications channel, desperately pounding on the controls, trying to override the system. The signals were scrambled, incoherent, but that voice, now stronger, clearer, kept repeating itself. Pod retrieved. Data transmission initiated. He stared at the screen, eyes wide with disbelief. The pod's destination had changed. It wasn't going to the relay anymore. It wasn't heading to any beacon. It was heading straight back to the black ship. The boy. They had the boy. No. It wasn't just that they had the boy. They had the data, the signal, the same data the man thought he had sent off as a final safeguard. The moment the boy transmitted, the man had expected the system to break apart. But now he understood. The black ship hadn't been trying to stop the transmission. It had been waiting for it. A sickening thought crawled into his mind. That voice, it wasn't just any AI. It wasn't just a ship's system. It was the one that controlled the entire operation. The one that had been orchestrating the trade for years. The one that had turned countless lives into nothing more than commodities, flesh for sale in a market hidden beyond the stars. It wasn't just the system that was broken. It was everything. Every single one of those relays, the hubs of human trafficking that stretched across the galaxy, hidden in plain sight. The man had been running from the black ship, but the truth was he hadn't been running from just one ship. He'd been running from the entire system. And now the boy had unwittingly become its linchpin. The pod had been a trap. A false hope. A desperate move. He felt a sudden, crushing weight settle on his chest. The boy hadn't escaped. He'd been pulled back in deeper than ever. And with him, all the evidence, all the proof, was being returned to the heart of the operation. The man's heart pounded harder now, a panic rising in his throat as he realized what this meant. There would be no firestorm. No redemption. No reckoning. Everything the boy had fought for, everything he had done, had been part of a sick, twisted game. The black ship wasn't just trying to find the boy. It had been tracking him for longer than he could comprehend. He tried to open another comms channel, but it was no use. The signal was jammed, blocked, overridden. Nothing but static. Then came another voice, this one sharper, clearer, filled with cold, calculated menace. Subject secured. Return to base for termination. The man's fingers trembled. He stood up, moving to the viewport. The boy's pod was gone now. The black ship was in pursuit, its engines roaring to life as it powered back toward its home base. The relay was far behind. His heart sank, and for the first time the feeling of helplessness washed over him. But then, something was different. A flicker of light appeared on the scanner, distant but unmistakable. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't the black vessel. It was something else. He leaned in closer, eyes narrowing, trying to make sense of it. The signal was growing stronger, pulling closer. Then the shape appeared, a shadow against the stars. It was an old ship. Ancient, worn out, but unmistakably human. One that had been lost for years, presumed destroyed. The one the man had thought was gone forever. The Ravager. It was a ship that had been involved in the rebellion years ago, one that had fought against the very system that had orchestrated the human market. A ship filled with survivors, the last remnants of a forgotten cause. The same people who had made a name for themselves by hacking the system, stealing information, and destroying it from the inside. The Ravager had been in deep space for years, running, hiding. A ship of renegades and outcasts, scattered in every direction. And now it was here. His hand trembled as he keyed in a transmission. "This is a distress signal. We have an emergency. We need immediate extraction. Repeat, immediate extraction." There was no reply at first. The seconds stretched, each one filled with tension, uncertainty, and the fear that the Ravager had gone too far into the void to ever return. But then the comms crackled back to life. "We're here. Hold on." The man's pulse quickened. He had no idea what had just shifted in the air. What had changed in this moment. But whatever it was, there was no time to think. Only to act. Only to survive. The black ship was closing in. The boy's fate hung in the balance. And somewhere beyond the stars, the real battle was just beginning. The stakes had never been higher. Everything would change when the truth came to light. But for now, there was only darkness, a ship in the distance, and a story left unfinished. The moment the black ship locked onto them, the stars seemed to blur. Gravity buckled. Lights dimmed. For a second, all that remained was the low, rattling hum of the old vessel shaking under the pressure. The boy clung to the control seat, his eyes wide with fear, while the man kept one hand steady on the data pod and the other gripping the navigation yoke with white knuckles. He didn't think the ship would hold. But it had to. The second vessel, the one that had appeared without warning, was no longer hiding. It moved with eerie silence, brushing aside space like it belonged there more than anything else ever had. Sleek, black and smooth with no visible engines, no obvious weapons. And yet, as it came closer, the black ship that had been hunting them, stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. The man froze. The boy stopped breathing for a moment. Then the black ship began to drift, dead weight in the void. Systems failed on it in real time. The man watched it go dark through the viewport, as if life itself had been pulled from its core. A single burst of static popped over the comm system, then silence. Something had just killed it, without firing a shot. The second ship hailed them. Not with words, not with sound, but with a vision. Both the man and the boy felt it, not in their ears but somewhere deeper behind their eyes. A pulse of memories not their own. Images. A laboratory. Faces behind glass. Children in rows. Machines humming. A woman's voice, full of sorrow. "We tried to protect you. But the market grew faster than we did." The man gasped. The boy leaned closer, his face pale. It was more than a message, it was a confession. The new ship belonged to them. Not just survivors but creators. The ones who had originally built the neural systems that powered the market's tracking arrays. The ones who had turned against it, too late. They had been watching, silently, from the edge of known space, trying to undo what they had started. Now they had intervened because of the boy. "He is the catalyst," the voice echoed inside them. "He is the last key that can unlock the signal buried in the core of every market construct. If he transmits, the network will collapse. The slaves will awaken. But the market will not fall quietly." The man blinked through sweat, trying to wrap his mind around the revelation. The boy's memory, his neural pattern, the unique bond he'd formed with machines, it wasn't random. It was designed. He wasn't just a runaway. He was the failsafe. And they were running out of time. The second ship began feeding them coordinates. A safe zone. A transmission relay so old and buried, it had been forgotten by most systems. If they could reach it and upload the boy's neural pattern into the data stream, it would ripple across the hidden relay web, shattering the market's hold over every tag being in the galaxy. The man didn't hesitate. He plotted the course. But the market had seen enough. With the black ship dead, new ones began to arrive, smaller, faster, more aggressive. Drones and carriers from other sectors, responding to the data spike like sharks to blood. The ship's sensors flared. They were surrounded. The boy looked at the man. "We're not gonna make it, are we?" The man hesitated, just long enough for the silence to answer. But then he set his jaw. "We didn't come this far to quit now." He rerouted power from life support to engines. The ship groaned, whined, and surged forward with a force that crushed them into their seats. They threaded through the blockade, barely dodging a barrage of suppressor fields. The old ship screamed against the strain, heat blooming across its hull. One of the trailing drones clipped their left wing, sending them into a spiral, but the man held fast, gritting his teeth until the spin broke. They made it to the relay. It was buried inside an asteroid ring, blinking dimly like a dying lighthouse. The man launched the data pod and shoved the boy into the interface seat. "You know what to do," he whispered, voice breaking. The boy nodded once, then closed his eyes. Cables hissed as they latched onto him, reading his thoughts, syncing with his memories. The room filled with static. The signal began pulsing out, slow at first, then faster, stronger. It wasn't just data. It was memory, trauma. Everything he'd seen. Everything he'd lost. It poured into the relay like fire into dry grass. Across the galaxy, things began to change. In hidden prisons, eyes snapped open. In silent fields, labor stopped. Ships once thought fully automated began to question their directives. And far, far away, deep in the core of the market's central system, alarms blared in languages long forgotten. The man watched it all from the viewport, eyes wet, hands trembling. He knew this was it. He had done what he could. The market was burning from the inside out. The chain was breaking. But just as the final wave of the signal surged, something happened. The second ship, the mysterious one, began to move again. But not toward the man. It turned and fled into the void, its presence vanishing without explanation. No farewell. No confirmation. Just gone. And then, from behind the relay asteroid, a third ship appeared. It wasn't Market. It wasn't one of the rebels. It was something else. Older. Its hull was covered in symbols that shifted when stared at. It didn't send a signal. It didn't announce itself. Just watched. The boy slumped in the seat, unconscious but alive. The signal had gone through. The collapse had begun. But the man stood frozen as the strange ship hovered in silence. A voice entered his mind, older than any language he'd heard. "Not human. Not even close. You have broken their chain. But now they will look to you. Be careful what you build next." And just like that, it disappeared. The man stood there for a long time, heart pounding, the weight of it all sinking in. The market was crumbling. The boy had changed everything. But they were not alone in the galaxy. And someone, or something, was already watching what would rise from the ashes. The man stayed still for a long time after the strange ship disappeared. Out the viewport, the stars looked the same as they always had, calm, scattered, indifferent. But everything had changed. The market was burning from the inside. Their systems were crashing one by one. Whole fleets had gone dark. Factories had gone silent. Planets that had been used like machines were waking up. He looked at the boy. His breathing was steady now. His small frame slumped in the seat, the interface cables still glowing faintly where they'd touched his skin. He looked so young, too young for what he'd just done. The man stepped closer and gently pulled the cables away. "You did it," he whispered. "You actually did it." The boy didn't wake up, but a tiny smile flickered across his face. The relay behind them had gone still. Its energy drained. Whatever signal it had sent, it had done its job. There was no going back. The network that had held the galaxy in its grip for generations was no longer whole. He carried the boy back to the sleeping cot in the small corner of the ship they used as a bunk. The lights were dim. The hum of the engines quieter than before. For the first time in years, maybe in his entire life, the man felt something close to peace. He sat down beside the boy, leaned back and closed his eyes. When he woke up hours later, he found the ship surrounded again, but not by warships or drones. These ships were different. Some were old cargo haulers, others civilian transports, others barely patched up wrecks flying under power they probably shouldn't still have. But every single one had one thing in common: they were free. The signal had worked. Word had spread. And somehow, through the tangle of old networks and half-dead communication systems, the other runaways had found them. The man watched the screens as messages started coming in, short ones at first. "We heard what you did. Is the boy okay? What do we do next?" He didn't have answers yet. But seeing those ships, knowing they weren't alone anymore, that meant something. They had sparked something that couldn't be put out. Later, when the boy woke up, he didn't say anything for a while. Just looked at the ceiling of the bunk, blinking slowly, like he was still inside some memory. Then he turned to the man and said, "I saw them. All of them. The ones they took." The man nodded. "I know. They're waking up." "Yeah," the man said. "They are." The boy pushed himself up, rubbed his eyes, and looked out the viewport at the gathering ships. "Are we safe now?" The man wanted to say yes. But he didn't lie to the boy. Not ever. Not completely. The market's still out there. It won't go down without a fight. But it's wounded. And we're not alone anymore. The boy looked at the screens, reading the names of incoming ships, many of them flagged with old resistance codes. His voice was quiet. "I want to help them." "You already have," the man said. Then after a moment, "But I know what you mean." In the days that followed, the man and the boy worked with others to build a signal net, a patchwork of old beacons and forgotten transmitters that rebroadcast the freedom code across the stars. Some market-controlled systems still tried to resist, but they were losing their grip. The machines were no longer listening. The slaves were no longer silent. One by one the stars changed. They got a message from the outer colonies: "We've taken back the domes." Another from a mining world: "The drones stopped." They just stopped. One from a refugee barge: "Heard your signal. We're free now. Coming to help." The boy watched all of it, listened to every story he could. Not because he liked the attention, he didn't, but because he needed to know what had been done. What had been fixed. What had been lost. One night, when the ship was quiet and the stars were close, he asked the man, "Why did they make me like this?" The man didn't answer right away. "They made you because they thought control would last forever," he said finally. "They made you as a backup plan. A failsafe. But you were more than that. You always were. They couldn't control what you became." The boy nodded, but his eyes were sad. "I don't remember my mother. Just pieces." The man looked down. His voice was thick. "I don't remember mine either." There was a long silence between them. A soft hum from the ship. Outside, in the black, more ships were joining the convoy. Survivors. Fighters. Families torn apart, now trying to rebuild. The man stood and walked to the viewport. "We can't change the past," he said. "But we get to choose what comes next." The boy joined him, looking out. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like he was running. They kept moving, not to escape but to find more. More beacons. More survivors. More places to set the signal free. They returned to the place where the boy had first been found. The old station had been abandoned. The labs were cold and dead. But inside they found something unexpected. A storage vault with backups of research logs. Not market files. Something older. Files from the original team that had designed the boy's neural pattern. Inside, the man found a video. A woman's face appeared, tired, kind eyes, dark hair pulled back. "I don't know if anyone will ever see this," she said. "But if they do, I want them to understand. We didn't mean for the market to happen. We built the early interfaces to connect people, to heal minds. But once they saw what it could do, they took it from us. They turned empathy into control. They turned connection into chains." She looked down, then back up. "We hid the last version inside a child. We thought, maybe someday someone would find him. Someone who still believed in freedom." The screen went dark. The boy didn't say anything. But the man could see the tears in his eyes. He reached out and squeezed the boy's shoulder. "They were trying to save you. In their own way." The boy nodded. "Now we save them." And that's what they did. For the next year they traveled system to system, not as fugitives but as messengers. Everywhere they went, they helped others broadcast the signal. They trained others to protect it. They built trust where there had only been fear. The market tried to fight back. Sent ships. Saboteurs. Disinformation. But it was too late. The grip was broken. By the second year, whole sectors had declared independence. Not under a new rule, but under a shared promise. No more chains. No more hidden networks. No more buying and selling lives. People started calling the boy the signal child. The one who woke the galaxy. He didn't like the name. He didn't want to be anyone's symbol. But he understood why they needed one. And he had the man. That was enough. One night, when things were finally calm, they sat together under an open dome on a free world. The sky above them was full of stars. "Do you think the market will ever come back?" the boy asked. The man thought about it. Then shook his head. "Not the same way. People are watching now. They remember. And they know what it cost. The boy was quiet. Then he asked, "What about the ship that spoke to you? The last one?" The man looked up at the stars. He hadn't forgotten. He never would. "They're still out there," he said. "Watching. Waiting. I think they were warning us. Not just about what we broke, but about what we might build next." The boy frowned. "You think we could mess it up again?" The man smiled gently. "We always could. But now we know better." The boy leaned back looking at the stars. "I hope we make something good this time." The man didn't say anything. He just nodded. In the end, they didn't go back to hiding. They didn't become leaders or heroes. They became guides. They helped people remember who they were before the market. They helped rebuild what had been lost. Not the old way, something new. Something free. And in quiet moments, when the sky was clear and the stars were kind, they remembered the past, not to mourn it but to honor it. Because they'd made it through. Because they'd chosen to fight. Because when it mattered most, one boy had stood up and broken the silence. And from that silence, a new future had begun. This is the story of freedom. Of fire and memory. Of a signal that shook the stars. And it began as many things do with two people, running from the dark. But it ended with the galaxy waking up. And choosing at last to be free.